that good? Okay, not all at once, guys. Can I go to that after party later, or is that going to be awkward? I'll just crash and drink all the drinks. Thanks for coming out, guys. Really sorry about the delay. Here we are in 2013, where we have amazing broadband service, and I have a 3D printer at my house, but PowerPoint is still the biggest pain in the ass in the world when you hook up to laptops. So that was the cause of that. But thank you for having me here at the East Coast Game Conference, and it's a really nice thing to see happen out here, to see that it's been growing 20 to 30% every year. And yes, I am in fact unemployed. So I have to confess to you that initially when Walter approached me about speaking at this talk, it was one of those things that I was like, sure, I'll do it, and I'll just recycle the story time that I did in PAX. Then I sat down and I thought about it. I thought about this show. I thought about the East Coast. I thought about Raleigh and the Triangle, and I realized that it deserves better than just recycling a talk that you can go watch on YouTube anyway. And besides, you guys all actually came out of your houses and came into Mead Space to come hear me, so the least I could do is do a custom presentation for you. Now, today I'd like to discuss several topics. The first thing I'm going to discuss is my history with the realm of shareware back in the day, and how it's still relevant more than ever. Then I would like to talk about this weird divide that's going on in the gaming audience right now. It feels like there's almost this gamer civil war that's occurring underneath all of it. Then I'd like to talk about the perceived demographic of the millennials and what they're all about and what that means to the future of gaming. And then I'd like to talk about why the East Coast needs to matter when it comes to gaming and technology. So to go way, way back to the shareware era, this was where I started in the early 90s. This was the magical time of bulletin board systems. Exec PC, BBS, software creations. You actually would dial into these other people's computers to download files. This was id Software doing Wolfenstein and Doom. This was Apogee, which later became 3D Realms, doing Duke Nukem. And this was, of course, Epic Games doing games like Epic Pinball and Jazz Jackrabbit. And back then, we didn't have Wi-Fi and broadband and all these great internet connections. No, we had modems. And there were these brick-like devices that made heinous noises that sounded like two toasters having sex when they connected. It was horrible, horrible. But it worked for the time being. And so this was the era of the original episodic entertainment. We would release episode 1 for free on goodwill. Hey, you like this? Trade it with your friends. Give it out, enjoy it, share it, hence the name shareware. It was a wonderful era. Hopefully if you liked it, you'd send us money for episodes 2 and 3. Step 3, profit, right? It was really its own original Wild Wild West. And it was the American dream of software development, of starting out of Tim Sweeney's basement or my old bedroom at my mother's house. And so I've gone on record before and I've said that the industry is in turmoil, it's in utter chaos, at which point all the websites and the internet picked up on this, and hey, free news story, free hits, people yelling and talking in forums about how I'm a douchebag or something. Fine, it's cool. But the thing is, I wouldn't actually refer to it as turmoil anymore. You could say that we're kind of in the midst of a storm, and since we're in Carolina, let's just go ahead and call it a hurricane right now. And, sometimes when there's a storm, things have a way of getting rearranged. Coastlines shift, trees fall, and rivers surge, and often what's left behind is stronger. It's different and sometimes occasionally better. And so I find myself, after 20 years of working at a wonderful studio, look at my awesome photo shoot there. That's me, I'm in the eye of the storm right now. I've passed through the first 20 years of my career. I'm in the middle of the eye of limbo right now, and I'm figuring out what's going to happen next. And when I look at the storm, it reminds me very much of the open-air shareware market of 1993, of those wonderful shareware days. It was the ultimate free market where people voted with their dollars. They shared episode 1 that they liked. And in 2013 and beyond, there are more venues and platforms for making it your interactive experience than there ever have been in the history, the brief history of this medium. If you want to get in this business now, there's never, ever been a better time. Except for, of course, maybe the shareware era, but much like a fast jackrabbit, that is gone. I'd like to talk a little bit about a divide that's going on in gaming right now. And it's something that I don't have an answer to. I just have to call it out because it's weird. And for those of you who love West Side Story, that's the Jets versus the Sharks, the original gag warfare. And then it broke out in the dance. So at GDC this year, there was numerous stories about the fact that the indie game has finally come of age. It was all over the internet in the days following GDC. It was really a crazy cool thing to see. Yesterday's hobbyist movement has now gone mainstream. The vibe, it seems, is that the indie game has somehow taken over, and that he or she, the developer, the independent developer in the basement or in their bedroom, has finally won a long, protracted war that they've been fighting for years. You know, when you watch the PlayStation 4 reveal, the fact that John Blow, the creator of Braid, is on stage talking about how his game The Witness is going to be on PlayStation 4, it's a pretty exciting thing. And when you watch Indie Game the movie, and Phil Fish, the developer of Fez, very outspoken guy, happens to steal the show, it's like indie developers are now movie stars? What is going on? Andy Schatz was the one who said it when he hosted the IGF Independent Gaming Festival Awards this year. He was saying himself that the developers, they're no longer the garage bands. They're now the Green Days and the U2s. They're the rock stars. They're almost mainstream. And does anyone else find it odd lately that we seem to know the faces and the names of more indie developers than AAA developers? Some interesting food for thought there. And yet, so many people are so eager to shout about the death of AAA. AAA is over, AAA is not going to happen, everybody's just going to play indie games forever. And you look in the NeoGAF forums where they comb over all the industry analytics on a day-to-day basis when they release the NPD results for the last quarter and they cite that sales are down a little bit in AAA. Maybe people are just tired of this console generation and they're either playing games on their iPad and their PC to get those new experiences because these consoles have been outstaying their welcome. Maybe that's the factor. Maybe people still want a AAA experience. So I have to ask you guys, why does it have to be a competition between indie games and AAA? Why don't we see this in film? I mean, the people who love to go to the Rialto are angry about the fact that Man of Steel exists. I'm still going to go see indie movies at the Rialto as well as go see Man of Steel in Super IMAX 3D or whatever format they release it in. Can the two not peacefully coexist? I look forward to the unique gameplay experiences and the risks that the indie game developer can bring to me. I find it to be very engaging. The first place I go to when I go to GDC is the Independent Games Festival. It's fascinating to me. I also recently beat BioShock Infinite, and I loved every minute of it. I want more of that AAA experience also. Can I not enjoy Ken Levine's masterpiece alongside John Blow's? This industry feels sharply divided right now. The vibe that I get is that there's really two camps right now. On one hand, you have this person, the core kind of hipster gamer. Whatever game you like, he liked it before it was cool. And then on the other hand, you have these guys. And I'm not saying it's, I'm using guys as an example. There's plenty of girl gamers now. It's just one of the things that you have the kind of frat boy or the 14-year-old kind of racist kid on Xbox Live. And there's this weird divide between the two. The two, like they're at war with each other. And the funny thing about that 14-year-old kid is I've never seen a generation of youth that is more comfortable with diversity and with varying sexualities, yet at the same time, it's a generation that's the first to sling racist and homophobic slurs at other people. Food for thought there. So, yes, I had to use a few memes in this, I apologize. It's such a cheap laugh, but I love it. More and more, it really feels like there's this us versus them attitude that's happening in gaming, almost like a mini gamer civil war. There are actual witch hunts for fake nerds. Gamers one up each other for nerd cred now. Oh, you like your Wii U? Well, I played Zelda when I was 8-bit. Oh, you like Skyrim? I used to play D&D with Gary Gygax. Hello. I blogged about this, and a friend of mine was very upset to see that this is actually the case in gaming, and she made the point that we're supposed to be the outcasts. We're the ones who take in the other people who weren't playing football at lunch. We're the ones in the computer lab at lunch. We're not supposed to be the ones who are divided like that. It's not a competition. So this is my message to all the gamers out there. They're all the different types. Cool it. We're all gamers. If you just started playing Angry Birds or if you have that multi-sided die, we're all gamers. Besides, I think we have enough outsiders that are railing against our industry and attacking our hobby that we really should band together, I think. I'd like to think that there's this concept called triple hate that I blogged about recently, and it's like, for some reason, people are angry at the fact that these games exist. And there's a belief that innovation can't happen in AAA. And it's no secret that in the AAA space, it is very hard to dominate. The more money that's required to make a product, the less risk the bean counters are going to be willing to take. It's a basic rule. However, it makes me happy that there's still some executives out there that would spend maybe, $100 million on a game that's set in a city in the sky with robotic George Washingtons, skyhooks, and a Disney princess sidekick. Even then, as much as I love BioShock Infinite, it's probably my favorite game in the last few years. You still have to have, people getting shot in the face in the game as the game's language in order to appeal appeal to a broad demographic of shooter fans. And I, like many, I fear that there will be less risks taken in AAA in the future. You know, those bean counters, the marketing guys, they always point towards past successes as an indication of future success, which is the exact opposite that you think. It's the same thing I said to Randy Pitchford a while back. If your marketing guys and your bean counters can't figure out your projected sales of your product, you might want to double down on it because that means you have something actually original instead of a copy of a copy. So several years ago, in another rant like this, I coined the term a power creative. And since then, I've come to believe in another term as well, the idea of a defiant visionary. You know, this is a person who's not out to be your friend. They don't always say yes. They have their eye on the prize to make something amazing and to innovate by any means necessary. People like Steve Jobs, Will Wright, Ken Levine. Take a talented, quite possibly crazy visionary, surround that person with a phenomenal team, and get the hell out of the way. Let the magic happen. Now, when I talk about the industry changing, I talk about the edges expanding. You now have room for giant teams to make, games with 1,000 people like Assassin's Creed. But you also have room, again, for the American dream of 4 people in a garage banging out their dream product. Or a handful of developers these days can make a breakout hit on the App Store or on Steam. I mean, how many people did Mojang actually have on staff when Minecraft was gestating? I'd wager to say it wasn't a lot. I want to talk a little bit about Palmer Luckey. Palmer's a young gentleman inventor who is largely, if not completely, responsible for the Oculus Rift. For those of you who don't know, that's the 3D headset that is taking over every conference that it goes to. There is a 2-hour wait at a recent show. People are just dying to see it because it really quite works. Here's a young man who, through his tinkering in his own garage, is single-handedly bringing back virtual reality from the joke that it was from the 90s. It's not the Lawnmower Man anymore. It's not Dactyl Nightmare. This is some true next-generation stuff. And here's one person who then surrounded himself with a wonderful team who's making a very, very innovative product. It reminds me of myself or any other young developer in their garage or parents' house. And if you look at the way that they're launching the Rift, it's really quite brilliant. They crowdsourced the funding through Kickstarter, is all the rage these days, but it wasn't just to put the headset out. They crowdsourced the dev kits, which are now getting into the hands of hungry developers out there. So I want to ask you a question. Do you think Palmer and those guys know what the killer app is for the Rift? Possibly. They might know how to make the perfect game. But you know what? There's a good chance out there that there's a small, hungry team of developers who might have a better idea. But why not let them have a shot at it? When we talk about team size, it's important now to consider it's not just about your team. Your community is your team as well. You can crowdsource your levels. You can crowdsource anything in your product. People are eager to contribute in this manner. Crowdsourcing your killer app for some hardware. Who would have thought of that? Today I'd like to talk about kids these days, this generation of gamers. It's really this, again, sorry about the memes, but it's a pics or it didn't happen generation. Somebody says something happens and it's like, oh, I didn't see that in your Facebook, therefore it didn't happen. Post that stuff, man, share it. And pundits like to put generations and demographics into these nice, tidy little buckets. And the term for the youth, as you can tell from the image I'm about to discuss, are millennials. And I absolutely loathe this term because it sounds like a disease. It's like, I can't come out to the bar tonight, my millennials are acting up. Oh, man. And I've always had trouble with these demographic labels. I think they're manufactured by marketing people who like to create those buckets for people who count the money. Honestly, there's just as many older gamers who enjoy doing many of the same things that the millennials do. There's really no line there. But if we were to try and define this, we would identify this group as a group that largely grew up with Napster and LimeWire, and now they're moving on to BitTorrent. This group of gamers expects things for cheap, but if something's great, they will shell out for it, hence the rise of free-to-play. I will give you as much money for your game as I think it's worth. Many of these gamers who torrent may not even realize that it's technically a crime. They may see it as a victimless crime. I, for one, would rather convert these gamers into paying customers as opposed to spending federal money to track these gamers down, arrest them, intimidate them, or pass laws that could potentially limit internet freedom. Thank you very much. We're also seeing a rise of generation of gamers that are okay without a lot of feedback. And for me, as somebody who likes buttons and vibrations and loud cars, this scares me. You have a Droid or an iOS. It's a touchscreen. You have Kinect, of course you are, the controller. You have electric cars that accidentally run over people because they don't hear them coming. This is a generation that if you said to them, don't touch that dial, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? This is a generation that enjoys contributing to the experience as much as they enjoy consuming it. You like Minecraft? Host your own server, record some videos, and share it with your friends. You enjoy League of Legends? You might be able to go pro and make real money playing that game. Stream your gaming. The fact that you love Halo and Bungie knew that they could have demo recording in it, they knew that idea really, really early on. Are you excited about BioShock? Record one of these Let's Play videos. I've seen so many of these that are the trend lately, where the gamer will actually play through the game 12 or 14 hours straight with a video. They'll put different series up on YouTube, and they'll put their little face in the bottom right corner recording it. And a wonderful thing happened with Infinite recently that I just think is a sign of the times, whereas, spoiler, there's a nice scare that comes later in the game, if you haven't gotten to it, where you turn around and there's a character creature behind you that just is a nice jump scare. And so many people had done a Let's Play of BioShock Infinite that they were able to do a supercut of all the people getting scared repeatedly in like a 5-minute video. And you can tell which ones were on the PC because they could see the mouse get all screwed up when they got scared. And it was almost its own version of the Slender Man shop videos, which it was just an amazing thing to see. And this is why I think Sony gets this. Whoever decided to have a share button on the PlayStation 4 deserves a raise. And although this generation, whatever you call them, may not know this, they're kind of a vain generation. Social networking has made everybody into their own version of a micro-celebrity. Even I know this. I'm on Twitter and Facebook like a teenage kid. I love it. I love sharing all the crazy things that happen in my life. We live in a world where we have a portal in our pocket that is the answer to almost any question that humanity has managed to come up with a solution for. And these gamers can exist in a wired world where ignorance is inexcusable. This demographic bucket, whatever the hell you call it, it's growing, it exists, and it's only going to keep growing. And the studio, the publisher, the developer who figures out a way to tap into that and cater it, will win in the future. Now, the final part of my talk here, I'd like to talk a little bit about the East Coast and the Triangle. So, when I accepted the offer to do this keynote, as I mentioned, I was just going to recycle another talk. Then I realized I had a great opportunity with a captive audience and potentially putting this on YouTube to talk about the area here. This is a great place to live. I first moved here in 1998, and that's actually a photo of Fayetteville Street from about 10, 15 years prior. Somewhere along the line, somebody decided to make Fayetteville Street a walking wall because it was a trendy thing to do. When I first got here, there were actual tumbleweeds blowing down Fayetteville Street Mall. It didn't work. Downtown Raleigh felt like the opening of 28 Days Later or I Am Legend. But honestly, back then I didn't care. I had just moved to town, I was a young 20-something person, and I was happy there was a mall and a Burger King. Since then, the city wisened up. They've realized that downtown growth is good. Growth in general is good for this area. You look at Fayetteville Street Mall out there, the road, and they block it off from Raleigh wide open. They have biker festivals, car shows. It's really a great burgeoning scene out there. And it's just one small example for how this whole area has started to shift. As the years went on, my expectations of the city changed along with Raleigh as Raleigh continued to grow up. Yes, we did have a bit of a dip in the global economy in 2008, everybody did, but now we're headed for some amazing growth. The hipster infection has been in full swing for a couple of years now downtown. You can't throw a beer bottle and not hit one. Not that I would do that. You can't go to a thrift or antique store and find anything there anymore. It's all picked clean, in an ironic fashion. So, don't get me wrong, I like the West Coast. I do. I lived out there for a while. I have family out there. It's got a lot to offer. The problem is so many people in technology and video games get so hung up on it. It's like the East Coast, West Coast war in rap all over again. The problem with California and the majority of the West Coast is word got out. One of my favorite stories about being out there is bringing my wife to Los Angeles, and we rented a car to go visit my family over in Orange. And we're sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. It was like a Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock on the 10 freeway. And I turned to my wife and I'm like, isn't LA glamorous, hon? Isn't Hollywood amazing? And she's like, I want to go home, I hate it here. Because everybody in LA finds their bubble and they stay in it because you have an inherently broken structure out there. The beaches out here, you know, the Carolina Shore, right? Wrightsville Beach, Carolina, Curry, the Outer Banks are absolutely amazing. Versus Santa Monica? mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good place to visit, but that's nasty. And you know, at least you can swim in our waters in the summer, you don't have to wear a damn wetsuit. You go to visitraleigh.com, and the list of accolades continues to stack up year after year after year. I couldn't even fit the ones from 2003 on that screen capture. You pay somebody, a programmer, an engineer, an artist, a designer, a good salary out here, and that person can live like a king. You pay them that in the Bay Area or even Seattle or LA, and they're barely scraping by to get rent. They're never going to have the idea to own a home. Cost of living. Random poking around on Zillow.com. Here's a house in Los Angeles. Not a bad house. For sale, $879,000 for your starter house right there. And for that, you get 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. The whole house is 1,600 square feet, and the lot is a generous 3,300 square feet. Let's see what you get in Raleigh. And to be fair, this is inside the Beltline for the same amount of money, in which, as you know, that area is more expensive. 810, even less. And here you get 5 bedroom, 5 bath, 5,700 square feet, the house alone, the lot 22,000 square feet. Now look, I'm not a real estate agent. I love the area, and I'm not, doing any sort of scientific study. This is just common sense. The Triangle and Raleigh in particular are really on the up and up. The cranes are back over downtown. Anytime you're in an area and you want to know if there's growth, look for cranes. Cranes are the ultimate sign of growth. We have organic food, trendy bars and restaurants, great shopping. Raleigh seems to be featured in the New York Times on a regular basis these days. Anthony Barr and James Goodnight knew that when they established SAS out here in 1976. And Tim Sweeney knew this when he put Epic here in 98. Citrix knows this. They're renovating the old Dillon Supply Company warehouse right over in the warehouse district. And Ashley Christensen is like a local celebrity chef, and she's becoming a national celebrity now and knows that this area is great. Don't even get me started on the amount of amazing companies that double down on RTP. I'm going to let you in on a little business secret. This applies just as much to technology as it applies to real estate and any other intelligent business decision. Find an emerging area early and ride it up. Hugh Hefner knew at a young age, hey, I like girls. I think this magazine thing's going to be big. I should put those two together. The Playboy Empire was built on that. In software, the first-person view in games, they invented the first-person shooter, and they owned that for so long. Bungie realized that there was no market for first-person shooters on consoles, hence the Halo franchise. The list goes on and on and on. And the same thing applies to any emerging city. You go to Brooklyn, all the cool people, you go to New York City, you want to go to Brooklyn, all the cool stuff's happening in Brooklyn these days. You look at locally, places like Brooklyn Heights and historic Oakwood. I have a friend of mine who bought a house in Boylan Heights, and they changed it up, switched it, renovated it, and they doubled the value of it, and then as the neighborhood grows, their value will rise in that house. It's basic gentrification 101. So, here's the thing though. Raleigh and the South still suffer from a bit of a national perception problem. That's a meme called Almost Politically Correct Redneck. You should look it up, it's great. I've traveled a lot for my career. That terminal is beautiful out at RDU. And whenever I'm in a key top market like New York, Seattle, or LA, and people ask me, oh, where do you live? And I say Raleigh, and I get one or two responses. The first one is, oh, cool. And the second one's the person who knows. Oh, my brother moved there. He loves it. I wish I could move there, but I'm stuck at this job right now. And they're the person who actually understands that. And this actually reminds me of one of my favorite stories about going out when I first started going out downtown years ago. And I was chatting up a nice young girl at a bar, and she says to me, I don't get out to the big city that often. And I say to her, I only get out to New York 2 or 3 times a year. And she goes, I'm talking about Raleigh. Oh, how times change. So, my point is, we're at the era of a new dawn of technology and gaming, and the Triangle, and Raleigh in particular, deserve to be the anchor for East Coast development, a hub, if you will. We have so many wonderful universities around here. Wouldn't it be amazing if some young, bright student went to one of the local universities from out of state and decided to live here because they got a fantastic job right out of school? I'm calling on the city's leaders to do more to get the word out about our fine city. I'm calling on the state to do their job as well. Now is the time to change the perception of the Old South. This is the New South. And I personally think it's a great place to live, work, and play. It's a great place to start a company. A technology company, maybe, or even potentially a gaming company. Thank you.
Now this is the part where I try to exit the room and like sneak out. Cheers. Thanks for coming, guys.